grudge purchases. We're talking about the things we don't want to do, which is insurance. But this is more from a personal perspective, right? Getting and making sure that you're adequately covered. I know that often when we talk about insurance on a personal level, a lot of people will also think about death cover. In particular, what's the death schemes? A funeral cover. There we go. Thank you, Sandy. When we talk about insurance, a lot of people will think about funeral cover. Yes, that is an option, but certainly not exhaustive of the options available. Some people won't take out, let's say, life cover, but they'll have like 10 different funeral cover schemes. Sandy is going to help us unpack what the best approach is. And these days, everybody seems to offer funeral cover. Everywhere you go, 20 rand, 50 rand, 5 rand. So how do you know that what you're actually taking up is going to be able to fully cover your needs on the day that you need it? So we'll have that conversation coming up in the rest of the hour. First, let's take some of the voice notes that you've been sending through on the open line.
Good morning, Cathy, and your producer and all the listeners of SAFM. Cathy, I like to talk regard to the government of Western Cape. Can you please, Premier of Western Cape, if you are listening now, if the vehicles of City of Cape Town, they go to the black location, they must not go alone, the workers. They must put the police or traffic cop or the security so that they must escort those cars, because those people that is busy hijacking cars, they target the City of Cape Town cars. So please, please, can you put the police? The workers, they must not go alone, because black location is dangerous, more especially here in Western Cape. And Katie, please, can you invite one day the mayor of Western Cape or the premier of Western Cape? That is my concern. Thank you. See you from Cape Town.
Good morning, Cathy. Look, man, Cape Town. Cathy, this reports of Aspen planning on retrenching people, and it is more reports of this retrenchment, this job bloodbath, especially in the Eastern Cape. Now, why people still vote for the ANC in the East Cape is a different matter. But I mean, where's the leadership in this? Where's the Department of Small Business? Where's the Department of Business Development? Where's the Department of Labor? Where are they in this matter? Where's the leaders? I mean, it can't be that thousands and thousands of people are being retained and there's nothing, there's no noise, there's no scheme. Where's where's the unions in this? It can't go on like this. It's just too quiet. Thank you.
Morning, Cathy. I was having a good conversation there. Unfortunately, you are alone. You are not with the government. Those AKA 470, they come from these poorest borders we have. They come from there. Now we've got a DA minister who's in charge of those borders. But they were blaming the ANC. Now they're in charge now. What is doing there? We have DA minister there. But there's nothing has been done up to so far. Nothing. I think it will be done because of.
Kathy, are you surprised when some people say under apartheid things were not this worse? When some people say apartheid was not all bad because there was some good about apartheid, there was safety. Only politicians and political activists were not safe, but crime was not this high. This is what the ANC and the democracy has brought us. But we can't blame the democracy because in Botswana, in Rwanda, in Singapore, in Switzerland, such things do not happen. So this is what the ANC has brought. ANC has gone to the dogs and it took along South Africa with it. Can ANC redeem itself? It can't change the situation in South Africa because it can't change itself. This crime and criminality rampant. We are going to be like Mexico and Colombia very soon.
Good morning, Katie. I'm Takata in Landi location, Kosimvabo. Yesterday, I was shocked when I heard from Mr. Faroz Kashalia saying that there is no need for deployment of soldiers in the Western Cape after that shooting that fatally took life of a person in Athlone Court. It happened in Wynberg, it happened in Blue Downs Court. In fact, it happened in many courts in the Western Cape, even Goodwood Court. But when he says that there is no need of deployment of soldiers, that means to me he is lesser caring about the lives of the people. I mean, Kathy, the police are there. Many times they said the police need to be on our streets, but they don't show up. We need soldiers to make sure that they are searching these guys who are arrogant. Thanks, Kathy.
Bafana Bafana will host Nigeria in a FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifier at the Toyota Stadium on Tuesday, 9 September at 6 p.m. Tickets are now available nationwide and online from 70 Rand for adults and 40 Rand for children at all Ticket Pro outlets, including Spar, Postnet, and all petrol stations. Get your tickets early to avoid disappointment. Come in Bafana Bafana supporter gear, ready to sing for a win. Gates will open at 3 p.m. If you are not in Bloemfontein, catch the game on SABC2. For more information, visit safa.net and at Bafana Bafana on all social media channels.
Do you know what's hiding behind the colorful packaging of unhealthy food? Big food companies target children with unhealthy packaged foods that hide high levels of sugar, salt, and fat, which could lead to heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. But the truth is hidden from consumers. Front of package warning labels are a proven solution to help consumers make informed decisions. The government must act now. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Sign the petition on heala.org, HEALA.org, by the 30th of September.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Give us like a Rafiki one-liner.
Lalela, Pulapul, Simba, Kolasel. Tell me, who are you? No, here comes a person who says, who am I? I know who I am. Who are you?
Well, the storyteller is telling story, John Carney.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Talking finance, making sense of your finance.
Okay, Sandy, Sandy, I almost called you by your nickname on air, and I don't want to do that to you. Sandy van der Zanden is in studio. He's in for Brian. Brian is out for the day. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners.
So, Sandy, today we're talking about personal insurance matters, and you're going to be helping us understand what the thinking behind personal insurance is and what one is really setting out to do when we take out personal insurance cover. Why should we care about personal insurance?
Well, that's a great question, because if you're thinking about just life cover, for example, you shouldn't care personally, because you're not going to be around to see the benefit. You're going to be, in the ground, and your family is going to get the benefit. That's why it matters. What this is about family financial planning. Life cover is only one element of it, and that's for the benefit of your family, but there are other types of covers that are for you personally. Really, cover is about ensuring that you and your family can maintain your standard of living if the unexpected happens, because it's unexpected. By its very nature, you don't think it's going to happen. Happens to other people, not to me. I'll be okay. What if you're not? What if the unexpected happens and now your family today is without your income and maybe without you? What does that mean for your family? That's the question where you start. You say, what does it mean for our family, and what do we need in order to make sure that we can carry on, at least financially? Because one of the major emotions that's felt, and then Brian talks about this a lot. One of the major emotions that widows feel on the death of their husband is two emotions. The one is grief for the person they've lost, and the other is guilt, because they're now worrying about money when they feel like they should be worrying about the person who's no longer there and about remembering them. And those two emotions are very prevalent in untimely deaths.
So, how do we have this conversation in a way that is not rooted in fear? And it's something that I always find fascinating about insurance, right? And insurance conversations, because it's all about the fear factor. What if the worst of the worst happens? And yes, of course, one has to prepare for eventualities, but you also have people that are optimists, that live in, that live in hope of the worst not happening. So is there a way that we can frame the conversation that isn't just about, well, if the worst happens today, what will you do? How else can we be approaching this conversation so that it brings more people on board? Because I find that if it's about only fear, then some people are willing to risk it. It's like, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I won't be the first, I won't be the last.
For sure. And I also don't find fear to be a very useful emotion in making smart financial decisions. So really what we're talking about here is smart financial planning for your family. And, we're dealing with insurance as part of that. So, if you're an optimist, you hope you're going to get to retirement, you hope you're going to live a long and happy life and everything goes well, and that's great. I hope that for you as well. Insurance is there in case what you don't expect happens. It's not about being fearful around it. It's about saying, these are things that may happen. I love my family. I think my income is worth insuring, for example. I have value. And just the same way you would insure a motor car, you insure yourself. You don't drive around with insurance hoping that you're going to bash into somebody or fearful that you might bash into somebody. It's built into your budget, and it's a rational decision. It makes sense to take a portion of what you're earning to cover the unexpected, because the impact financially of you hitting a sports car could be absolutely financially devastating to you and your family. And instead, rather pay a little bit of money every month, you put it in your budget and you set it aside against the eventuality that you hit that sports car. Do you want to hit it? No. Might you hit it? Maybe not. But there's a whole wide array of things that could happen to your car. It could get hail damage. You could, God forbid, hit a pedestrian on the road. You could hit a rock. You could fall into a pothole. You could hit another vehicle. These are all things that may happen. And all we do is we assess that as a risk, and we assign a number to it. And everybody's number will be different, but you assign a number. And once you assign that number, you try and get the most comprehensive cover that you can get to cover all the eventualities with the number you've set aside.
So where should we start then on an individual level? You've talked about death, and I think that becomes a central point. And insurance, I think for many people, including those who historically would not be able to access insurance products, death becomes the big thing. And I touched on funeral cover, that often that is seen as the answer to financial planning or planning for death. That if you have funeral cover, then you're sorted, because you'll be able to get through the funeral without much difficulty. Maybe speak to us about some of this.
So funeral cover is an interesting one. So it has very deep cultural roots in South Africa, and funerals can be expensive in South Africa. So funeral cover certainly has a place. And where funeral cover is very strong is that it pays out quickly on death, and you can insure a whole lot of people in your family under one policy quite simply. So you can have all the brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and everybody insured under one policy, and it pays out pretty quickly on death to help cover the cost of the funeral. So it has a place. It is not cheap cover. So if you look at that funeral cover per 100,000 Rand worth of cover, or per 1,000 Rand worth of cover, because funeral cover is normally quite low in value, it's maybe up to 50,000, maybe 100,000 in total. If you look at that costing versus a normal life policy, it's quite expensive. And it's expensive because it has its place, and it's intended there just to cover the funeral. You can have lots of people on the plan, pays out quickly. If you take that a step further, you say, okay, we've now covered the funeral. What next? Do we have any debt that needs covering? Because working out your life cover is quite simple. How much cover do I need for my life? You cover all of your debts. So now all of your debts are covered. And then you look at the income. You say, how much income needs to be replaced for my family if I'm no longer around? If the number's 10,000 Rand a month, because you're the sole breadwinner, it's 120,000 Rand a year. You need 10 years of that. That's 1.2 million Rand worth of cover. Simple, straightforward. Add your debt to that, and it's quite clean cut. We can get more in-depth to that, and we run cash flows and try and understand all the different things. But if you kept it very simple, cover your debts, cover the replacement of income for however many years you think you're going to need it. So, for example, if it costs you the 10,000 Rand a month for school fees, times that by the number of months in the year, 120,000, times by the number of years they're still going to be at school. So if they're going to be at school for another 10 years, that's your 1.2 million Rand right there. Nice and simple, clean. Funeral cover has its place, but its intention is in the name. It covers the funeral. It doesn't cover what comes next. We're talking about what comes next. I mean, I was just running a scenario just for myself to understand, because one of the other important covers that you would have as a salaried employee, for example, on a pension fund, is what's called income protection. So you'll get life cover. You may get capital disability, so that pays a lump sum, same as life cover, on permanent disability. But if you're disabled and you can't work anymore, there's a cover called income protection, which covers your income. Now, you would say, why would I rather not just get 2 million Rand paid out to me on permanent disability? Why would I cover my income? So here's an interesting one. I looked at somebody earning 10,000 Rand a month. I said, you're 30 years old today, and if you wanted to cover your income until age 65, right, so you're talking another 35 years worth of income, increasing every year with inflation, because you would hope every year you would be getting an inflation increase to cover the increasing costs every year. Any guesses what that lump sum you would need would be to cover your 10, or how much income that is over 35 years? Somebody earning 10,000 Rand a month. It's over 14 million Rand. So you need a lot of capital disability to pay out to replace your income. I mean, just running the same scenario, just to understand why that number gets so big. If you're starting with income today of 10,000 Rand a month, in 15 years, that's 22,000 Rand a month income, just at 6%. So if you were getting 6% increments every year, you would be earning 22,000 Rand in 15 years' time. That becomes, by the time you retire at age 65, 76,000 Rand. It's a big number. You have value. The greatest financial asset in your life is you. You're going to continue earning income for the rest of your working life. That has a value. Hopefully you're putting aside, if you're on a pension fund, you're putting aside money towards your retirement. And as part of that contribution, some of that is going towards what they call group risk cover, which is the cover that the pension fund offers you. Maybe life cover, maybe disability cover, maybe income protection, maybe even dread disease cover. That's the other area, of cover that you would be looking at for yourself. But just to kind of finish off the circle on life and income protection and disability, these are things that you hope don't happen to you. It's like walking around with an umbrella. It might rain, it might not. There's a cost to carrying the umbrella. and hopefully you don't have to use it. But if you do, you don't get caught in the rain.
We're going to continue this conversation with Sandy shortly. And Sandy, I want you then to sort of begin to break down what the options that we should be looking at more specifically at a personal level are. I'm also noting some of the questions that you've started sending through for Sandy on this, and some of them have to do with the funeral cover that we're speaking about, and what you said about funeral cover, that it's actually not cheap. You might have to explain that a bit later, because if I'm paying 50 Rand for this on a monthly basis, that is very accessible, very affordable. It's whereas if you're asking me to pay 500 Rand for life cover, that of course is 10 times the 50 Rand and seems a lot more inaccessible. So I would also want you to break that down a bit further. I'll be taking your messages and calls for Sandy on 086 000 2032, the WhatsApp line 0614 104 107. It's now time for the latest news headlines. It's 10:30.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good morning. The Constitutional Court has started hearing the case that trade union Solidarity and others have brought to challenge the constitutionality of the National Health Act. An ANC Youth League PEC member in Limpopo has been shot and killed. He was travelling to Kimberley in the Northern Cape for the League's meeting to prepare for the National General Council meeting when the incident happened this morning. And Tunisian authorities have denied reports that a drone has struck the global Samud flotilla in the North African country waters. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the Rand is currently trading at 17 Rand 48 to the dollar, 23 Rand 69 to the pound, and 20 Rand 54 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE has extended gains in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are currently in positive terrain. Gold is trading at $3,645, platinum $1,395 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $66.59 a barrel.
So you thought you were building a business? In this economy? Good luck. But day by day, somehow it grew. You became payroll, procurement, PR, and pressure valve. You kept going when the freezer didn't freeze, the bucket didn't budge, and the bank balance barely blinked. What's that saying again? What doesn't kill your business makes it stronger? Or at least it should be that. So you thought you were building a business. You weren't. It was building you. Because this isn't just what you do anymore. It's who you are. And you don't trust just anybody to protect it. Chat to your broker about Old Mutual Insure Business Insurance. Protect what built you. Old Mutual Insure Limited is a licensed FSP and non-life insurer.
This week on FC Meets, sports brand specialist and creative director Cathy Mohlahlana talks to us about the rising Yeleti sports brand. From school sport partnerships to athlete collaborations, join us to find out more. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC Plus on Saturday 13 September at 6 p.m. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Play 10-chai game. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Talking finance, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue our finance segment this morning. Sandy van der Zanden is in for Brian Hirsch, and we're talking about personal insurance. What is it that we need to be looking at to ensure that we are adequately covered? And unfortunately, often the conversation has to begin with death, right? What happens when you are no longer here? What are the concerns that you would want to address, and how then does insurance begin to play a part in covering that? Of course, it's not the only reason to get insurance. Sandy has touched on income protection as well. He's touched on some of the critical illness cover so far and what that means on a personal level. So Sandy, I don't know if you want to continue just running us through the list before we get into some of the questions that our listeners are putting through.
Perfect. So we'll come back to the funeral cover, because I think there's some great questions around, what do I mean by funeral cover is not cheap?
Yeah.
So we'll deal with that. So just in terms of the different covers you can get, what cover is out there? You get life cover, so that's death too soon. Something happens, pays and it covers you. You don't get the benefit, your family benefits. Then you get your disability covers. So that's if you're unable to continue working or something's wrong with you physically. You get lump sum payments and you get income protection. And that's where we looked at what the value of income protection is, ensuring your income versus a lump sum. The third major level of cover that you would look at is what's called critical illness cover or dread disease cover. And this you can almost think of as it's a payment on diagnosis. So basically you get diagnosed with something you don't want to have. You get cancer, stroke, heart attack, something that you don't want to have. Hopefully you're on medical aid, that will cover the costs of that, of that treatment in hospital. But thereafter, there can be complications or other costs associated with your condition that are not covered by medical aid. And if you don't have medical aid, they're just costs that you have to start incurring. For example, there may be, specialist drugs that you need to start taking. There may be, cancer drugs that are not covered by your plan that are actually better for you, but you have to fund them yourself. There's often co-payments, which is when the medical aid pays some and you have to pay the balance. There may be an expert in a different region to you in the illness that you have that medical aid may cover, but you covering the flights, you covering the traveling, you covering the accommodation to go and see this specialist. And we have seen this. There are specialists around the country, around the world, specialist devices, special machines, experts in certain fields that are not necessarily covered even if you have medical aid. So dread disease is intended to cover that. It's that type of cover. Those would be your main personal levels of cover, and you get the same type of cover if you're trying to cover somebody in your business, even if you're covering yourself in your business. That would be company-owned policies. Those policies are your key man covers and your buy-sell covers. So if you're a business owner and you have somebody important in your business, it might be a manager, and if that manager's no longer at work on Monday, you've got a problem. You've now got to cover the difference in income. Maybe they were central to bringing in income every month. Your business needs that income, so you can get a lump sum payment to cover that and to hire somebody to replace them.
I think, Sandy, just describe what a key man cover is from a business point of view and why it matters. Because South Africa is a very entrepreneurial country. We've got lots of people that are in businesses, small, medium, especially, and yet these are not necessarily options that we're often thinking about.
Yeah, South Africa certainly is very entrepreneurial, and we need to be. We can't rely on a lot of structures to be there for us. And if you just had to think of it as, if you're a business owner, a small, medium business, you've got employees, or maybe you have a partner, that's critical to your business continuing as it is. If something happens to them, they have specialist skills that maybe you need to replace, but it's going to take some time. Company-owned policies is exactly the same as personal cover. So you get your life cover, your disability covers, and your dread disease cover, your critical illness cover. The main ones you normally look at is life and disability. If something happens to somebody who's key in your business, which is why it's called key man cover, because they're key to your business. Something happens to them, there's a financial impact on your company that you want to, again, mitigate against. So it makes sense as a business to allocate a little bit of revenue to covering against the unexpected. Same as you're insuring your vehicles, your stock, etc. You're covering the key people in your business. And a different type of there's two main types of company-owned policies. Well, there's three actually. The one is key man cover, which we've catered for now. The second is buy-sell insurance. So if you in this business but with a partner, and something happens to them, they die tomorrow, what happens to your business? Now you've got the family of your partner coming into your business. That may not be something you want to happen. So you draw up an agreement between you. You say, this is what happens when either of us dies. And then you put an insurance policy to that saying, if one of us dies, the other one will take the payout from the insurance. My family gets paid for the shares, and you continue as the sole, partner in the business. So it caters for that. And the last one is covering against debts. It's a contingent liability. Something, often if you're in business, you have to sign surety for things, for bonds, for vehicles, for finance. Something happens to you, that loan gets called in. What happens to the business? So you would get a contingent liability policy. Again, life and disability cover. It's all the same thing. All these fancy terms are just to try and protect against the unexpected. In this case, we're just talking about in a business.
Okay. Thank you for that breakdown, Sandy. So let's then go back to the questions around life cover. And because this really becomes the reference point when you bring up insurance and personal cover in our country.
So I thought it was a great idea to circle back to the life cover and the funeral cover and just understanding what's expensive, what's important, what's simple. So if where I say life cover is expensive, or rather funeral cover is expensive, you quite rightly point out, if I'm paying 50 Rand for funeral cover, that's not a big expense. It's covering me, and that's great. And that's where funeral cover is very powerful. It's got very low barriers to entry. You can pay very small premiums and get a level of cover to pay out when you die. What we see, though, is that many people will take out a lot of funeral policies. So if I'm paying 50 Rand for 10,000 Rand worth of funeral cover, maybe I now take out 10 of those policies so that I can get, 100,000 Rand worth of cover. But now I'm paying 50 Rand for each of those 10 policies. I'm paying 500 Rand a month in total for 100,000 Rand worth of life cover. If I had to take that same premium and go to the life insurance market, any of the major insurers, you might pay half, you might pay even less than half for that same level of cover. So you might end up paying 200 Rand a month for 100,000 Rand worth of life cover. And where I say that funeral covers are very powerful is that many of the insurance, in fact all the insurance companies, have policy minimums. So if all you have is 50 Rand, funeral cover is the policy for you because you can access it at very low premiums. But if you can start heading towards the minimum premiums of the life insurance market, then you're starting to get, maybe if you've got 200 Rand a month, let's say, is the policy minimums for the insurers, you can get a lot more cover for the same premium that you're paying. That's why I say that funeral cover is not cheap. It's valuable, it's accessible for anybody, so anybody can access these policies quite simply, quite easily, but it becomes more expensive if you're looking for bigger amounts of cover. If you're not just looking to cover the 10,000 Rand for the funeral, you're looking beyond that, you want more cover. Then it becomes cheaper to look at the normal insurers, but just remember that it may take a little longer to pay out. So the funeral cover, the other major strength is that their intention and their whole purpose for existing is to pay very quickly.
Okay. We've got this question from one of our listeners who says, I appreciate this program. Thank you. We appreciate you too. I have a funeral policy for 10 years with a financial institution. It's a bank. I no longer have an account with them, but I'm paying it religiously. I'm being offered certain incentives, but I can't use them. It's 500 Rand per month.
Okay, so thank you for raising the question, because I was going to raise another important point around these multiple covers everywhere. They only have value if your family can find them. Right? Do you have a policy document? Do you have a number to call? Do you have a policy number? Is it somewhere that people can find it? That's where we talk about the life file, where you've got all your important documents together so that your family knows, what's going on when you die. So with regards to ancillary benefits around the policy with the bank, if you can't use the benefits, then they're not really benefits to you. I'm not sure what the specific issue there is. We can chat about that if you'd like to pop through a query to us. We can certainly, look at it for you. But, if you're looking at 500 Rand a month, you're starting to enter the realm of, regular long-term insurance as opposed to funeral cover, depending. If you're covering 20 people under your policy and that's why it's 500 Rand a month, then probably long-term insurance would not work for you. But if you're covering one person, or it's you and your spouse, for example, there may be better costed options that you can look at.
Okay, thanks for that. I want to then bring in the voice note questions that have been coming through for you. We'll play them one at a time. Maybe before we do that, let me also ask this question that our listener has sent through. And it's on the key man policy. And the listener is asking if it would work for a sole proprietor or private company with one owner.
So it's a very good question. You can, your business is a separate legal entity. Mm-hmm. So although you're talking about a sole proprietor, so in that case, it doesn't, it's not really company owned because you are the company.
Yes, and I should be able to insure myself because I am the main key man.
Yeah. So you can insure yourself, but in that case, there's no business to protect. When we talk about a business, we're talking about a separate legal person. You go and register the business, you set it up. So we've now got Cathy Pty Limited, trading. That's a separate person from Cathy the individual. Mm-hmm. That company may, as a legal entity, as a person, may have its own needs. It may need to insure Cathy. It may need to insure somebody else in the business. Mm-hmm. It's not the same person as Cathy. When you're a sole proprietor, you and Cathy Pty Limited are the same person. So you would probably just be looking at personal cover. But again, if there's nuances around this, happy to engage with you. If you pop through a query to us, we'll certainly assist.
Okay.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning, and thank you for a wonderful show. Your guest is Andy. It's always a pleasure to have him. Tell me, a quick one. I have no kids. I have no wife. I'm earning pretty well, so I have a decent job. I want to leave something for my brother's kids. I have 3 brothers, and amongst them, they have 3 kids each, so there's quite a lot. So I want to create a trust where eventually, if ever I die, but them at a certain age need to get, be able to get into that. And obviously a trust needs a lot of money, and because there's so many of them as well. So can he perhaps advise? I know it's a very tricky situation, this, and it's not easy to just advise on the air, but perhaps if you can give me a point me in the right direction. I'd like to create a trust where perhaps at a certain age they all can maybe access this money to give them a better start in life.
Perfect. Sorry, I didn't get your name, but thank you for the query. It's certainly not an uncommon question that we do get, and there's 2 ways that you can approach this. The one is you can, as you say, set up a trust today. And in the trust you would have what's called a trust deed. It states what you want to happen in the trust. It appoints trustees. So the trustees are the people, they're like the managers of the trust. And then you say what has to happen, who gets the money, who are the beneficiaries, and when can they access it. So that trust, if you set it up today, it has a cost today because it's, again, a separate legal person like a company. It may need audited financials. You might need an accountant looking at it every year for you, etc. So you would have to have assets in this trust today. That's called a living trust or an inter vivos trust. If all you're trying to do is leave money when you die for the benefit of your nieces and nephews, I'm not sure if there were nieces, I heard the nephews, then you can set that up in your will. Now, your will is your central founding document of your financial plan. It's the single most important piece of paper in your whole financial plan. What happens when I die? If you don't have a will, I highly, highly suggest you set up a will today. Quite simple and free if you need to do it. And inside your will, you can set up a trust when you die. It's called a testamentary trust or a will trust. In your will, you state, I want to set up a trust for the benefit of my brother's children. I want them to get the money when they turn 27 and a half, and they can only access half the money at that point because I don't trust they're not going to spend it all, and the balance they can get when they are 31 3/4. Anything you like, you can specify within legal bounds. You can specify in that trust, and there's no cost setting it up today. The cost is incurred by the executor or whoever's winding up your estate. They set it up then.
Okay, thanks for that, Sandy. Somebody else wants to know, this is an entrepreneur who says, I'm the owner of 3 franchise stores. Would a key man policy be ideal for me? There's no signature there, it's just anonymous.
All right, anonymous. You're certainly not alone in owning multiple franchises, and well done for having built that up. Certainly not an easy occupation to be in. When you're asking about key man cover, I'm going to make the assumption that you're not talking about covering yourself. I'm going to assume that you're talking about covering the key individual in each one of your franchises, because that's what the key man cover would be for. You may be a key man, and certainly in that case you can cover yourself, or at least the company can cover you. I'm going to make another assumption here and assume that you are operating a company, for example, a holding company that owns these 3 franchises. That holding company, you might be the key individual, and each of those franchises may be owned as a company separately, and they may have their own key individuals and requirements for cover there. Key man can certainly help you. That would be to cover each one of the businesses, or any of the businesses, if something happens to a key person in that business. So the business doesn't collapse if something happens to that key person, and you can carry on. If, however, your concern is around paying off debt, for example, you have signed surety for the loans on each of these companies, you want to leave your holding company to your family, but you want the business to continue, and you know these loans are going to get called in if something happens to you, you might look at a different cover called contingent liability. It's all the same thing. It's life cover, disability cover, dread disease cover. Structuring it is, just whichever policy type makes sense for you.
All right. Let me take another voice note before I go to the phone lines. Maybe let's look at the premiums and payouts.
Hi, Cathy and the SFM listener. Cathy, you know what? The funeral parlors are more cheaper, and they can even, thinking of the people. Unlike these, big companies like Old Mutual and others, Labeti, whereby their payout are too little, but the monthly premium is too big, is too high. You pay 500 for the payout of 10,000, 15,000 for so many years.
Thank you for that query. It's a bit of a curious question. So it sounds like you may have had some experience with the older types of cover. So many years ago, you couldn't buy pure insurance, what we call pure life cover today. You pay a premium, you get a payout. So you pay 500 Rand a month, you get R1 million paid out. If you cancel the policy, there's no benefit. Right? You used to get these mixed policies, where it was a bit of life cover and a bit of an investment lumped together, and you never really got the best of either one. You didn't really get very cheap life cover. So the caller mentioned very low payouts for high premiums, and you never really got a good performing investment. The benefit of them was if you cancelled the policy, you got a cash payout. Whereas with pure life cover today, you don't get a cash payout. The benefit is that with the risk cover today on pure policies is much cheaper. So it may be the case that you've had a bit of an experience with the older type of policies that used to be sold in South Africa.
Okay, so basically come back into the market, do a bit of shopping around.
Do some shopping around, you might be pleasantly surprised. Okay. Age and health buys insurance. So we're not sure how old you are, we're not sure how healthy you are, but you've got those two in your pocket, you can get decent costed cover today.
Okay. Papillon, you're in Eldorado Park. Good morning.
Hi, sister. Greetings, both of you there. Before I begin, I'd just like to throw an insinuation. You recall when Mr. Cyril stated he stands corp, he wonders why people are suffering so much, no employment and so forth and whatever. And I think that is about the last month, whereby I will reply and say, is he not responsible to organize the jobs for South Africa? Is he not responsible for the South Africans to move forward and whatever? Yet, to my calculation, he hasn't done nothing. But anyway, earlier on, you had stated a life cover to be taken until 65 years. Is it not a fact that being state employed, it is a must for you, being can I say a teacher, can I say a policeman or a nurse or something of such, upon reaching the age 60, it is a must for you to retire. So can it not be minimized, can I say, from about a 30-year period? If you start at about 30 years until 60 years, that's a 30-year period, but you emphasize on until you are 65. And that is about impossible being a state employer. Do you recall that?
For sure, Papillon. Thank you for the query. So I use 65 as a broad example. I am aware that different employers have different age requirements, and 60 is quite early to retire today if you're expected to live well into your 90s. So your point is well taken and well made. What we really just trying to understand is look at how long your expected working term is, and what we were talking about in terms of cover in that case would have been income protection. So it would have been, I just projected forward to age 65 on income protection. So maybe instead of needing 14 million rand, maybe you would need, 11 million rand to cover what your expected earnings would be. Being an employee of the GEPF, you typically have group risk cover. Part of the premium that you're paying for your pension or your provident fund is going towards risk cover, which would be life cover, disability or income protection, and maybe dread disease cover. And that would vary department to department, employer to employer. So certainly not a fixed thing. And if you were looking at life cover specifically that you're taking yourself, you would want that to be whole of life. So at least you have the option of keeping it forever.
Okay. Andira Singh in Pietermaritzburg says, great program. Thank you, Andira. Andira wants to know, she has funeral cover with a bank for over 10 years now. It only pays 20,000 Rand on death. I've now paid way over that amount. Is there something that I can do?
And I apologize for laughing, Andira, because you've just come across the great paradox or the great challenge with risk cover. Is that, and this is why I talk about funeral cover being so expensive, because if you're looking at long-term insurance, you take out 1 million rand worth of cover for 200 rand a month. It's going to take you a very long time to pay 1 million rand in premiums in order to equal the payout that you would be receiving. With funeral cover, those numbers are a lot closer. So I can certainly believe that you have paid more in premiums than you're actually going to be getting out as a payment. The challenge is, what do you do about it now? So you can obviously cancel the cover, but it's like cancelling car insurance. There may or may not be a cash payout. It depends on what policy it is that you have. If there's no cash payout, then you've paid all the money and you don't get the payout at the end of the day. And that's the great paradox with risk cover, is if you and that's why I favor for big amounts of cover or trying to get more cover. I favor the long-term insurance market because you will get out more than what you've paid in premiums if you keep the policy for life, because the numbers are much, much bigger.
I guess part of it, Sandy, speaks to why this has to be part of a broader financial plan, right?
That's it. Your funeral, and you know you've picked on the one policy, which is the funeral policy. Certainly important, but there's a broader discussion to be had there. What other covers are needed, and what other covers may you have?
Warren wants to know. Warren says, I have life cover for the past 11 years with the same company. If I was to take life insurance with a different company, do I then lose out on all the premiums that I've paid to the one company for the last 11 years? And is there a way of transferring benefits or making one paid up?
So Warren, again, you coming across the one of the great challenges around risk cover. If there's no cash value to your policy, you cancel it, it's gone. But you're talking about replacing cover. So your goal would be replacing 10 million rand cover with another 10 million rand cover and paying the same or less, or getting more benefits for the same premium. So in effect, you haven't lost anything, and you would certainly not change covers unless it's to your benefit. So never cancel cover until you have the new cover in force and confirmed.
So don't cancel while you're still going to fill in the application forms, eh?
Definitely not.
All right, Sandy, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the information that you've shared. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to some of the other questions that are coming through. We'll forward those to you just to give you a sense of what it is that people still wanted to get into.
Yeah, they can get hold of us on the radio line, which is 011 880 4888, or they can pop through a query to us to info@bhca.co.za, and we do come back to all questions.
Thank you, Sandy. Up next, the 11 o'clock news update.
Thank you, Cathy. On the top stories, Concord hears solidarity case challenging the NHI Act, and authorities in Tunisia deny drone attack on the global Sumud flotilla. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. The Constitutional Court has started hearing the case trade union, Solidarity and others have brought to challenge the constitutionality of the National Health Act. In July last year, the High Court in Pretoria declared certain sections of the NHA unconstitutional. The Health Minister had appealed the ruling. The matter is now with the Constitutional Court. An ANC Youth League PEC member in Limpopo has been shot and killed. He was travelling to Kimberley in the Northern Cape for the League's meeting to prepare for the National General Council meeting when the incident happened this morning. A Youth League PEC member who was also in the car that the deceased was travelling in says the attack happened along the Clackstop Road in the northwest. The NGC meeting will start tomorrow and finish on Friday. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa is set to visit the troubled Titsombotla local municipality in the northwest today. He will formally announce the national government's decision to oversee the administration of the municipality. This is in response to the collapse of the delivery of basic services in the municipality following persistent governance failures and financial mismanagement. The DA has again called for the removal of the Gauteng Health MEC Nomandungo Moralihugo and the Health Department head Lesiba Maludana. This follows a revelation that the department has an outstanding debt of 8 billion rand for the 2024-25 financial year. The DA says 12% of the country's 67 billion rand budget for the current financial year will be spent on paying last year's debt, further crippling service delivery at health facilities. In the Auditor General's latest report, the Health Department has again been flagged for financial non-compliance, failing across all key audit areas. The DA's Gauteng Shadow MEC for Health, Jack Bloom.
Every year, the Auditor General comes out with a scathing report on the Gauteng Health Department, and for many years now he's been saying that there's absolutely no consequences for officials who haven't done their job in fair tenders, supply chain management, preventing irregular and fruitless expenditure, and the same officials are still in charge of that department, and that's why we have the problem. The MEC for Health and the head of department need to be removed because they're the ones in charge of this department for quite a long time now, and it just seems to get worse and worse.
Tunisian authorities have denied reports that a drone has struck the global Samud flotilla in the North African country's waters. They say the explosion came from inside the vessel. The flotilla was carrying 6 members of the GSF steering committee who are all safe. Ditamba Tsotitsi reports.
In a statement, the Global Samud Flotilla says that the boat is sailing under the Portuguese flag and all 6 passengers and crew are safe. It says it was also damaged by fire following the incident, and an investigation has been launched after the attack. It has further added that the acts of aggression aimed at intimidating and derailing the mission will not deter the crew. This mission is aimed at breaking the siege on Gaza and stand in solidarity with its people. Ditaba Tsotitsi, SABC News.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court has started hearing the case that trade union Solidarity and others have brought to challenge the constitutionality of the National Health Act. I'm Ondilambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
Hi South Africa, my name is Mazola Molefe, SABC senior journalist and touchline reporter. What makes me laugh? A lot of things make me laugh. Family, seeing my kids grow, becoming the human beings that they are. Some of the stories that I come across are quite laughable. My favorite setup in the house has to be my man cave. I've got a wife and 2 kids. Not that I'm trying to run away from them, but if I had to choose between being a pilot, taxi driver, and a bus driver, it's a tough one. I wouldn't choose either, but if we put a gun to my head, maybe a bus driver. It's tough to walk in the mall sometimes because people are stopping you, wanting breaking news, wanting updates on everything. So that's what I love the most about SABC.
Catch sensational touchline reports on match days with Mazola, Super Journal, Killer Molefe. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
EFC's heavyweight title fight is live this Thursday. Elvis Moyo, the legend, a name whispered in the halls of greatness.
Elvis is the heavyweight champion of the EFC.
Now stands on the edge of his greatest enemy, Mutunga Jikasa. Triple H enters the Hex with a score to settle. Now redemption is on the line. EFC is live this Thursday from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Cathy, Errol here. Hope you're well. You know, South Africa is fast becoming a gangster state, just like the old Al Capone days in Chicago in the 1930s. But the difference is those gangsters fought among themselves and killed themselves. They didn't really harm the public. But in South Africa, nobody's safe from these thugs. Yeah. Anyway, that's made me thinking because of that lawyer, Mr. Van Niekerk, who was killed, just gunned down in his office, Errol, Durban.
Morning, SFM. This is Sawenkosi. This topic is very, very touchy. It's very touchy because now we're seeing our people who are fighting for our safety of our community. They are being targeted now. I think SAPS and the government, they need to take a decisive steps to protect the people. Those community police forums, those people, they are not safe at all when they are with their families, because now they are doing their good job protecting the family, the community part. What happened when they are with their families? Because the criminals, they know where they are living, they stay. So now I think government, they should take a decisive step about this thing. Thank you.
Hello, Cathy. I'm phoning. I used to walk 7 kilometers for fitness, and I've noticed in the last 2-3 years things have got so bad and security so scary for a woman walking alone that I now walk within the precincts of my own home. I'm lucky to have walls. I know I'm very lucky to have an element of security. I walk 5 kilometers every day round my own small, modest property. I am fearful to go out of my front gate. A woman alone simply isn't safe in this country. It's very, very depressing. Thank you so much. I want to remain anonymous. I live in a small town. Thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, Cathy, Willie here in Kuma. Cathy, you're so-called the best constitution in the world. That is, it's exacerbating these killings because the criminals get away with this. They know that there's going to be parole and so on and so on. So therefore, we laid ourselves a speaky bed. Let us revisit this constitution. The Human Rights Commission also, who are so overprotective over the illegal immigrants, that leads to illegal possessions of firearms. Thanks. It's Willie here in Kuma.
This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to journey into the past while shaping the future under the theme Reimagine Our Heritage Institutions for a New Era. We celebrate the stories, traditions, and voices that define who we are as a nation. From vibrant conversations to thought-provoking debates, SAFM is where heritage meets innovation, connecting generations and keeping our culture alive in a changing world. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out, because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Here, the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz Festival invites you to 3 unforgettable days deep in the heart and art of jazz. From the 26th to the 28th of September across 4 enchanting stages at the Sandton Convention Centre, where you'll be mesmerized by world-renowned stars. Take me there. Buy your tickets at Ticketmaster now.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, you're listening to The Talking Point. We're in the final hour of the show, and we're going to then be focusing, at least for this particular half hour, on the Tsiamiso Trust. And this trust has been managing the 2.27 billion rand payout that is related to miners who contracted tuberculosis or silicosis. These are former mine workers and their dependents. Now, part of the aim is for these funds to be distributed to those individuals who qualify to receive these payouts. Dr. Munyadziwa wa Gwinda is the CEO of the Tsiamiso Trust, joins us on the line. Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners. Thank you for having us.
So you recently held your annual general meeting, and you were talking just about the status of the trust and the work that you've been doing in as far as identifying beneficiaries and distributing some of these monies and payouts to beneficiaries. What would you say is the overall state of work that you've been able to do?
Thank you, Cathy. In terms of the overall state of the work that we are doing, we measure it based on the claimants that we were able to reach out, currently sitting at around 450,000. And we count that based on our database of those that, according to us, with the records of services that we have at our disposal, we are sitting at a number of 1,032,000. Then we also look after those that have contacted us, that we've been in touch with. We look at how many have we lodged since the beginning of the trust, and we are sitting now at just above 150,000 that have lodged their claims with the trust. Then we also look at those that have been through our claim process up until the payment stage, where now we are looking at plus or minus 24,000. And that is where we are now. You talk about how much have we paid since the inception of the trust in 2021, when we really started to operate, now sitting at around 2.28 billion.
I just wanted to clarify or get clarity on some of the numbers. So the 450,000, that number that you just ran through, what does that represent?
That represents the number of people that we have located,
okay,
based on our database. In terms of the trust deed, we have 10 years to locate potential claimants. And then the last 2 years is now, which can even be more than that, is now to finalize the claims that are on the pipeline. So we have a database of those mine workers, even including the deceased ones, that have worked in the qualifying mine during the qualifying period and doing risk work based on the records of service that we're able to obtain. This number may increase as time goes on, but currently we are working on that number of 1,032,000, and we are saying 450 of those we have located, and we were able to determine if indeed they meet the minimum criteria. Then those who have lodged then is around 150,000.
Okay, so effectively, if we look at things, you so far have been able to locate just, I think, under half of those that are on the database that you have received. What have been some of the challenges in trying to identify these claimants or beneficiaries or potential beneficiaries?
Yeah, the challenge is, Cathy and the listeners, it really emanates from the fact that we are a product of a settlement agreement of a class action, where you cannot be told this is where you are going to find the claimants. And we also look at the footprint of these ex-mine workers who were recruited from deep rural areas in the whole of the SADC region. Now, beside only talking about South Africa, talk about Lesotho, Mozambique, Botswana, Eswatini. We have to reach out to all these claimants irrespective of where they are. So some of the challenges is how to reach those claimants to make sure that they all come up and establish if they really qualify to lodge claims.
So the issue has been with being able to track the individuals.
Yes, the issue of tracking, because we do not necessarily do track and trace. So we use campaigns and outreaches working with the different stakeholders. And I will give you an example. You know, in Lesotho, we work with the parliament and we use the mechanisms to communicate even through traditional leaders. And sometimes we partner with parliamentarians as they do their normal work on the ground to make sure that we reach out to as many claimants as reasonably possible.
I'm curious to why you're not doing the actual tracking and tracing of these miners, because one would assume that that would perhaps also foster some of the greatest results, greatest impact, whatever documents that have been shared by the mining companies of their former employees would at least give you a place to start in trying to identify these beneficiaries.
Yes, the reason why we are not doing the track and trace is for two reasons. We have done a pilot, Cathy, and the listeners, even in the Eastern Cape, to see if that can work for us. There is the issue of limitation of resources. And with the pilot that we tried to do to implement, which could not even bring the results, that's why we could not even replicate it anywhere else. Hence, now we depend on sending messages out, and we are still exploring, you know, different methods, even including the community-based structures to get to as many claimants as possible. Hence, when we measure these numbers, as I said, we are only halfway into the 10 years, but we are just below half of the number that we have on our database. And we just want to improve and ensure that at least we reach as many claimants as possible.
I guess what I'm finding strange, right, is that if you have been in the employ of an organization, this organization would have had, at least on record, your latest home address, area that you come from, maybe a contact person or detail. And if there's important information relating to you, at the very least, it should be able to reach that place. I mean, are you at a basic level even sending out letters, some form of communication that lets these individuals and the contact people that they had on file know that this person is eligible for such a program, or could be eligible due to this class action?
Yes, if you look at our qualifying period, it dates back to 1965. That is from 1965 to 2019. It's quite very easy for those mine workers who are still in the employment of the mines. It becomes more difficult as you go back to those who have left the mines many years ago, and also the changing in the contact details. If you can just imagine, way back in 1970, somebody may have left the mines and we need to track. Some of them have passed away. I know practically of a case where we use the contact details that we had to just alert the person that you will please approach the trust. You may qualify to claim, and the person does not respond. And I know that person, as we are starting the outreach in the Eastern Cape tomorrow, will be coming to one of the sites. And that is where we have realized that when we do outreach, we have got more claimants coming up just to hear that the trust is in the vicinity. And that has been working for us also as part of reaching out to as many claimants as possible.
Okay, we're getting quite a few questions coming through for you. Malusi in Polokwane. Good morning, Malusi.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good, Malusi. Go for it.
Okay, I just want to ask because I was getting a different response from Tiamiso Trust about these employees when I'm asking about the benefit of my father. So because I just want to know because some of his employees tell me that the mine I was asking about qualify and the other one, when I phone next time to give me my father's number, he told me that the mine doesn't qualify. So I didn't understand to which mine does it qualify for their benefit.
All right.
Can I respond to
Yes,
that, Cathy?
please. Yes, please.
Yeah. We there are 82 qualifying mines. When we talk about qualifying mine, is 82 of them. Some have been closed and they are now under the 6 mining companies, which are the founders of Tiamiso Trust currently. So what we look at when a claim comes, that is what we look at in terms of, did this person work in a qualifying mine? So if they work under the qualifying mine, then they are able to meet the minimum criteria. Of course, during the qualifying period and also doing risk work where they were exposed to silica dust.
Malusi, does that answer your question?
And the list of the qualifying mines are there on our website, but through our call center also they can further inquire if they need further details.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get, because if the employer says yes, and the other one says this mine is qualifying and the other one says doesn't qualify, while I've already given the benefit number of my father, I thought maybe there might be something of misunderstood. So that's why I didn't understand how does it become that the other miner the mine is qualifying, the other one doesn't qualify.
Or let me clarify that. You may find that somebody works in a qualifying mine for a particular period, then they move to another mine. We have had people who have worked in 5 mines, and only to find that out of the 5 mines, they've worked on only 2, which are qualifying mines in terms of our trust deed. So even when compensation is made basically based on the 2. That's why, Cathy and the listeners, in our payment process, we have got what we call benefit modification, where the agents representing the mining companies will look at how many qualifying mines has this person worked in, and that affects ultimately the amount of money that that person will be paid.
All right. Thanks for those questions, Malusi. You know, we're just thinking about Dr. Munyadziwa, what happens, right, after you've gone through the process, 10 years to track beneficiaries down. It comes down to it when we look at the rate at which things are happening. So far, only 24,000 payouts have been made. If we keep up with the rate and the pace of things, that means that at the time that the 10-year period lapses, you are still very much going to have a situation where the majority of people who were potential beneficiaries have not received any kind of payouts. What happens then?
Yeah, Cathy, to use the number of payments that have been paid to determine the success, it may be a wrong way of looking at it. I'll tell you why. Currently, when I speak about those we have contacted, those we have lodged, because of the process of certification, which the most critical one being the medical certification panel, that is where now it is determined if the claimant or the dependent claimant has a qualifying disease. Now, this number of 24,000 comes from that process. And what the figures are telling us to date, Cathy and the listeners, is that that process of medical certification, from those that have been through it, only 30% of claims have been found to be medically eligible. What does that mean in simple terms? Out of every 10 claims that goes through, only 3 are found to be having a qualifying disease. And that is what gave rise to these 24,000, meaning there are many others that were found not to have a qualifying disease. That is the kind of a picture that we have currently.
Yeah, but again, we're still working off such a low base, Dr. Munyadziwa, in the context of what it is that we're dealing with here. I'm sure there's a reason why the courts even agreed that compensation should be set at 2.27 billion rand, because it was to account for how extensive the damage could have been. And we also know that there have been questions around, number one, those individuals that are going through the testing itself, and number two, those who probably died from these diseases.
Correct, Cathy, and you are correct. Remember, there was a settlement agreement that was made an order of the court, and that is what gave rise to a trust instrument, which is the trust deed. Now, the people who were involved in putting this trust deed together as part of the settlement agreement are both the mining companies and the attorneys representing the ex-mine workers. They set the qualifying criteria that as the trust we are using currently, which tells you you need to have this and this, and you need to have this cardiorespiratory impairment level for you to be said that you have got a qualifying disease. Let me give you an example, Cathy.
Okay.
On something.
Sorry, Dr. Wakindwa. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for this conversation. We are going to have to leave it there for today. We will, however, continue to follow up on the story as it is still ongoing, and it is an important one to get a sense of the process and how far things are going in giving those payouts, at least to the beneficiaries that are deserving. It's time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, the Municipal Workers Union in the Northwest has welcomed the national government's decision to place the Tsobotla local municipality under administration. The Constitutional Court has started hearing the case that trade union Solidarity and others have brought to challenge the constitutionality of the National Health Act. And the DA has again called for the removal of the Gauteng Health MEC Nomandungu Moralihogo and the Health Department head Lesiba Malutana. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Spar brings you super savings. Get 450-gram Bacoma Wheat Bix for $26.99 and 50 megs free data on Spar Mobile, or 750-gram Nola Mayonnaise for $38.99 and 100 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Plus, you could win your share of 6 million rand in instant cash. Prices valid until 22 September 2025, while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
When you're smiling, describe your favorite socks.
Pink and orange stripes.
They're blue with yellow dots.
Green, and they kind of look like snakes. The ones that make children smile.
On 19 September, wear your favorite socks and help spread smiles to children in need of a life-changing surgery. Get your Socks for Smile sticker today at smilefoundation.co.za. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Let's rewind 6 years, when Twitter was still Twitter, not a letter of the alphabet. TikTok was simply the sound your clock made. And Zoom just meant enlarging a picture. So it makes you wonder, what will the next 6 years bring? Go Hino trucks now come standard with a 6-year drivetrain warranty, covering everything from pistons to gears. So although a lot can change in 6 years, our warranty promise won't. T's and C's apply. Hino, all the way.
#SAFM Talking Point.
Mzansi, set your sights on playing Powerball and Powerball Plus for 114 million rand in total guaranteed jackpots this Tuesday. You heard right. Play Powerball for guaranteed 57 million rand and Powerball Plus for the guaranteed 57 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
For our final conversation this morning, this interview has been brought to you by the South African Local Governance Association. The Global Exchange presenting an opportunity to focus on leveraging innovation and international collaboration. This is to create resilient, inclusive, and future-ready workforces for thriving municipal centres. It's just one of the benefits of working in a system that, of course, looks at what is happening in municipalities and local governments the world over. Temba Ngumalo is a senior advisor for HR, collective bargaining and dispute resolution at SALGA. He joins us on the line. Mr. Ngumalo, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners.
Let's talk about the Global Exchange. What is it?
The Global Exchange is a peer learning global movement that we are having with our sister organization, which is the ICMA based in the United States. And we have member states who are also members of the ICMA. Currently, we're having a seminar here in Joburg where we have colleagues from the US and various cities in the US, as well as Eswatini and Botswana.
Let's talk about then South African municipalities. We know the challenges that we face in as far as governance, finance and capacity are concerned. What is the role that networks like the Global Exchange play, and how can they help us in strengthening our own local government?
What we are focusing on currently in the seminar is about talent management, how to use people that are driving institutions for those institutions to thrive, excel, and do better. In this instance, we're talking about institutions such as municipalities, your metros and your districts, and the counties, as they call them in the U.S., how to deal with the element of human capital and human resource management to ensure that we optimize talent, to ensure that those institutions function effectively.
We often talk about, the bad stories. We know just how wrong things can go, even how wrong they've been going in our country. But are there things that we bring to the global stage in the context of solutions or best practice that we can share? Is anybody looking to learn anything from us?
There is a lot of learning that we exchange with our peers all over the world. We do have pockets of excellence, and of course we do have those who are performing quite poorly. But this is a global phenomenon. What we have learned over the years, and even today in the seminar, is that we have a common set of challenges across the globe when it comes to the management of municipalities. And at the center of it is how we source the human resource element and ensure that when we recruit the best talent to get the right skills as well as the right attributes for people to be either in leadership, both administratively and politically, to ensure service delivery, ensure prospective economic development, and so on for our people.
When you look at the trends that are happening in other parts of the world, and again bringing South Africa into the picture, Why would you say municipalities are struggling to attract and to retain skilled professionals?
There's various reasons. Different municipalities have different reasons for that. Others, it's a matter of not being able to attract the correct talent due to various issues like economic issues, geographic location, conditions of service, and other incentives that may attract employees. In other cases, it's just an issue around lack of leadership or leadership interference where it's not supposed to be. As you would understand, a municipality is constituted by both the political leadership and the administrative leadership. If the two are not in sync, you are bound to have challenges, which then would filter onto the communities in terms of disrupted services or poor services or no services at all in some cases.
Yeah, and it's important, an important aspect that you're touching on there, because there is an impact on service delivery. How are we ensuring that we can bring these scarce skills back to government or even into the public sector, when, of course, talent is also looking for opportunities in the private sector? And if it's greener there, that's where the talent will go.
Yes, no, that's true. However, we have also we need also to acknowledge that local government is also a very good, talent development space. If you recall, what we have learned here is that if you look at our Skills Development Act, it starts by saying, let us make every workspace a learning space. So local government is no exception. We would like to ensure that whilst we are in local government, we develop our leaders and develop them, even if they leave the sector at a later stage. But the big picture is we shall have developed talent for the skills base of the country, which is quite necessary. So, yeah, our institutions are poised to be also learning spaces, but also ensuring that as we develop leadership, it also filters down to our communities for them to thrive.
How long is this global exchange going to be taking place for?
It's going to take 3 days. We started yesterday, we'll be finishing tomorrow. And it's an annual event that we want to now have. What the ICMA does is on an annual basis, they select one of the member states to convene this global exchange program.
All right, Themba Nxumalo, we'll leave it there with you. Thank you for your time. He is a senior advisor for HR, collective bargaining and dispute resolution at the South African Local Governance Association. So I think it does matter that we're part of conversations at a global stage that seek to change or even improve the state of our local governance. All right, on that note, it brings us to the end of the talking point for today. The show will be back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Up next is the book reading.
This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to journey into the past while shaping the future under the theme, Reimagine Our Heritage Institutions for a New Era. We celebrate the stories, traditions, and voices that define who we are as a nation. From vibrant conversations to thought-provoking debates, SAFM is where heritage meets innovation, connecting generations and keeping our culture alive in a changing world. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents the first episode of the book Ballroom Dancing by Nolita Fakude, read by Vuyokazi Tebe.
Forward. The story of Nolita Fakude is a masterclass in how a young black girl who grew up under apartheid South Africa and was raised in a small village in the Eastern Cape stood up for herself, took hold of the opportunities she identified as stepping stones, and became one of our best. Our South African liberation story was meant to give us many more stories like this one. This is a dream we cannot give up on. Nolita Fakude shows us that such dreams can come true. The insight Nolita gives us into her life, from early years learning the basics of business at her single mother's knee in the family's general store, to the air-conditioned atmosphere of the boardroom, is an invaluable opportunity for us to learn how success might be achieved. We learn from this book that while it is not easy for a black woman in South Africa to rise to the top, it is also not impossible. It is hard work, hard fight, and it pays to have mentors and promoters, as well as to hold on to your truths. I hope many South Africans who doubt themselves or those who sometimes feel discouraged will read this book, gain new energy, and stay woke. Nurtured and supported by her loving family, Nolita was determined to get a university qualification, and setbacks did not stop her from fulfilling this dream. As a young student, she chose a balanced life. She pursued her studies, and her love of music saw her fight hard to be in the school choir. The balanced life between academics and extramurals prepared her for a life with multiple high-stake roles. When she stepped into the corporate space, she focused on being a high performer, continued to fight for her rights, and learned to be collegial in a potentially racially polarized work environment. Nolita is of the generation of professionals, black and white, who were trailblazers. They gave shape and meaning to black economic empowerment, whether it progressed or stalled. Nolita's trailblazing spirit was enriched by her leadership position in the Black Management Forum, BMF, a position that came with a need to embrace a political role and to be part of the national discourse on economic transformation. For all these roles, there were no pioneers to learn from, no playbook or application to turn to for guidance and facilitation. Nolita's cohort of leaders created the trail. We celebrate all of the milestones and the role played by the BMF in the era of Nolita. Her move to Sasol and the international arena was another mountain to climb in the transformation journey. But for this girl from the Eastern Cape, no mountain was too high. And the journey is not over. Tackling gender inequality needs the lessons and experience gained by these trailblazing leaders. South Africa needs more boardroom dancers like Nolita Fakude. Forward by Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Under Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of UN Women. Prelude. As much as others were toing on the streets of our political, social, and economic freedom, some of us were toing inside South Africa's corporate boardrooms for socio-economic empowerment. The story of South Africa's freedom since 1994 is nearly always told from the political as well as the social perspective, while the economic empowerment successes and failures are told from a narrowly defined BEE perspective. The story has never been told from an affirmative action and employment equity perspective, through the eyes and lived experiences of one of its most visible beneficiaries, both from a race and gender perspective. I am that beneficiary, and this is my story. It was by sheer coincidence that my career started in June 1990, shortly after Nelson Mandela was released from prison in February that momentous year. My corporate journey continued through the first 25 years of South Africa's democracy. It felt relevant and worth exploring further and sharing with others, not only for the invaluable insights I gained along the way, but also in order to document my professional path so far. I started working when I was 8 years old. My father had died and left my 28-year-old mother bereft with grief and with 3 children to take care of, aged 7, 5, and 3 months old. So my mother needed all hands on deck to get life back to normal. Being one of those hands on deck became my routine until I got married. 43 years later, it was time to come up for air. I was due for a gap year. Besides, if I was to be a productive world citizen and a caring member of the human race, I realized that I needed time out to re-energize and get myself grounded and refocused. I had just turned 51, and I needed time for reflection and planning for the next 50 years, God willing. From the day people heard that I was leaving Cecil after 11 years, many of them called to find out about my next plans. At the time, I had one big master plan: to take a gap year. That's what I told them. However, these people encouraged me to think differently about this gap year, reminding me not to squander the time. I am truly grateful for their thoughtfulness and encouragement. Write a book. That was both Nkgopotse J.J. Tabane and Muzi Khuzwayo said, independently of each other, without skipping a beat. I'll help you get started. Please call on me if you need to. They each, in their own crazy way, nudged and coached me to get the book rolling. You are true brothers in arms. Thank you. Professor Michael Katz called and got straight to the point. Are you okay? He asked. Please, come for a cup of tea soon. Knowing how tough corporate boardrooms are, he wanted to give me a safe space to talk in case I needed that. Fortunately, all I needed at that time was his big, warm hug and assurances that I was not mad for wanting a clean break rather than a sabbatical. Vukile, my cousin from my father's side, and our elder in the Amahekebe and Abatembu clans, insisted on visiting me at home to make sure that I was really okay. Ruel Khoza was another concerned friend. Sisi, what are you up to? He asked in his firm big brother voice. Then encouragingly, Sisi, if you can, please write your story while you have this break. We need more black business voices out there. We don't write enough. Alan Reyes, asked me to do a few podcasts or videos with him for his TV program, The Big Small Business, on leadership, values, and mentorship. These sharp